Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your MVP hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. We have 3 reviews for you today. First, I'm gonna start things off comfy and cozy, bringing the good vibes with a show about a man and his cat, aptly titled My Roommate is a Cat. After that, John kinda stays on theme by giving you a bunch of dog fighting, but thankfully not the literal kind. Just a bunch of girls bringing their A-game, maybe, when it comes to aerial combat in the series Magnificent KOTOBUKI. And finally, I will wrap up this episode by talking about the one, the only, best anime football boy of the world! And the newest iteration of the show featuring him as the titular main character, Captain Tsubasa. Sounds like a colorful batch of shows. So let's not waste any more time and dig in. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. So, let's talk about pets. Pets are great. I think we can agree on that. Most of us, I hope most of our listeners too. Yeah, they can enrich your life in many different ways. When you're a kid, they can teach you how to take responsibility and what it's like to take care of a living being. When you are grown up, they can be like steady, familiar rock in your tumultuous adult life and even take care of your health. Like, for example, if you have a dog and you have to walk the dog, you get a bit of fresh air once in a while. I think for some of us fucking couch nerds and PC nerds, this is a good thing. And yeah, I think both John and I were fortunate enough to spend at least some of our lifetime with a couple of dogs. Yeah. But I've also owned, I don't know about you, John, but I've also owned some cats and love them just as much as my dogs.
I mean, I have nothing against cats. Mm-hmm. It's just that I have severe allergies, so I can't really have a cat. So my family, as long as I've been around, these 34 long years on this green and blue marble, we have always had dogs. We haven't had one in a couple of years, but my mom has been talking about getting another couple of dogs later this year, so cool. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of nice. It's, you know, that means that it's been quiet around the house, but, you know, sure. You also miss having a dog going around just being a dog, doing his thing.
And I mean, they're quieter breeds and, you know, more vocal breeds out there, so...
Yeah, I mean, the last few dogs you had were Bernese mountain dogs. They don't bark a lot, so...
Anyway, my point being, it doesn't really matter what kind of pet you have. Chances are pretty big that eventually it will be treated as an integral part of your family. And this is what the first series I'm going to review today is all about. Family. What it means to have a family, how we form bonds with living beings that make us consider them important entities in our life. The relationships between friends, parents, and kids, and yes, even animals. So, My Roommate is a Cat, or, oh man, I'm gonna regret this because I'm gonna butcher the fuck out of this.
Uh-oh.
Dokyonin wa hiza tokidoki atama no ue, which is roughly translated to, my housemate is on my lap, but sometimes on my head.
I mean, that does describe a cat pretty well.
I guess, yeah. So this is a little series about a young mystery author called Subaru Mikazuki, who is 23 years old, very introverted and antisocial. And when he visits his parents' grave one day, he comes across a young stray cat. That cat and its mannerisms immediately seemed so mysterious and fascinating to him that he is struck by inspiration for a new novel. So he decides to adopt the young stray, even though he doesn't have the slightest idea how to take care of an animal. What he couldn't have foreseen is how this chance encounter with the cat he later names Haru will change his entire life forever. So yeah, let's talk about the production stuff first, which I think I haven't done in a while, just, you know, rattling down the production credits here and cast and crew. The series is based on a manga written by Minatsuki, which I assume is a pen name, which is amusing considering the main character in this series has a kind of similar pen name. And the manga was illustrated by As Futatsuya. The anime is produced by Zero G, who have done a bunch of stuff, mostly helping out with second key animation and stuff like that, but they also handled the production on stuff like Dive, helped out with the production of Overlord, did an Idolmaster show. They also apparently did the animation production for the old OVAs MD Guys Part 2 Death Force and Shadow Skill, which are first of all a blast from the fucking past like none other.
No shit.
This was one of the first hyper violent anime I've ever seen. Like MD Guys is woof. Jesus Christ. Not for the faint of heart. But also doesn't really fit with the rest of the portfolio, if I'm honest, and look at the rest of their credits. Like, those two, Shadow Skill and MD Guys, are kind of sticking out. But yeah, whatever. Director is Kaoru Suzuki, who also directed Dive and the Hellsing TV series, among a bunch of other episode director gigs. But anyway, they did that stuff. And My Roommate is a Cat is a solid-looking show. Nothing special. There's not that much elaborate animation going on. A lot of people talking. But they clearly spent most of the effort on the cat Haru, which I guess is important because she's kind of the main character besides Subaru. But yeah, she is animated very well and cat-like. The animals in the show in general are pretty cartoony and cute. A couple of cats. There are few dogs, one prominently featured, the neighbor's dog, except for the crows, who are the stuff of nightmares. But yeah, but they are supposed to be, but realistically animated enough to be convincing. The human characters are alright, some off-model shots here and there, but nothing off-putting, and the backdrops are also pretty good. And the music is done by someone called Kotoringo, whose only other anime credit seems to be composing the theme song for My Miracle. Okay, but I really like the low-key minimalist soundtrack of this show. It fits very well with the laid-back atmosphere and mood of the series, but can also well up and be very emotional when it needs to be, and it can also be playful and feisty, like when Haru embarks on one of her adventures and gets a bit rambunctious and doesn't know how to handle her human. So yeah, the music complements that pretty well. So let's talk about the story now, with that out of the way. I'll probably give away a couple of basic plot points this time, only because there really isn't that much plot in this show to begin with. And the juicy stuff is the character development and the emotional moments, which, even if you know them, it doesn't really detract from the things you might feel if you encounter those, if you actually watch those scenes, I hope. Anyway, like I said, this is a show about family, and at the beginning of the show, our main character Subaru doesn't really have one anymore, or at least it doesn't seem like he does. We later learn he has a childhood friend called Hiroto, who occasionally checks up on him, or kind of regularly, but that's kind of it. Subaru is not good with people in general. As a child, he was already pretty introverted, mostly interested in reading books. I mean, makes sense that he later became an author. But yeah, mostly interested in reading books more than anything else. But things have gotten even worse since his parents died in a bus accident during a trip. A trip Subaru was supposed to accompany them on. But he refused because, well, he kind of hated going on trips, his parents. They took him on trips often, and, you know, he is an antisocial guy. He doesn't like to go out and doesn't to interact with other people, so he hated those trips. And this time decided he'd rather stay at home. So as you can imagine, even if he doesn't show it in the beginning, deep down he is consumed by guilt. He blames himself for not stopping them, for not spending more time with them in general, for not accompanying them on the trip, being with them more. All that good stuff that will send you into a spiral of depression and self-loathing pretty easily. And he has not verbalized or contextualized any of these feelings. So they are slowly eating him up inside. And he clearly has not worked through his parents' death at all. Since then, he has sheltered himself even more from the outside world, has developed a lot of anxieties and so on. He is mostly focused on writing his books. His fridge is always empty. And if Hiroto didn't check up on him regularly, he probably wouldn't even have anything to eat at all. He also hates crowded places, so when Kawase, his new editor from the company who publishes Subaru's books, invites him to meet for the first time at a cafe so they can talk business and he can introduce himself, Subaru is legit pissed. He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't know how to talk to Kawase. He doesn't know how to talk to people other than Hiroto in general. He's very socially awkward. One of his quotes is, "I'll make a point to avoid anything I can't control. I just want to live my life quietly and not make any big waves." And boy, does that sound familiar. At least to an extent. And then by pure chance, Haru enters his life and turns it upside down. Because now Subaru is forced to interact not only with her, which is an ordeal entirely in itself, but also with the outside world. Because, for example, he has to buy cat food. He has to go to the vet. He has to deal with people asking him questions he doesn't know the answers to because he has no idea what cats do, what pets do, what he has to do. So he gets in a lot of, for him, especially difficult situations that he has to work through and has to find his way out of. And in that way, not only does Haru force him to open himself up to other people, but also the experiences he has with her in his everyday life now slowly begin to bring his suppressed feelings and memories of his parents to the surface. One of the early important moments is when he picks the name Haru from a children's book his mom read to him when he was a kid. So it is an immediate emotional connection to the name for him. But by chance, it also happens to be the name of a young girl that gave food to the cat before when it still was a stray. So it responds to the name because it associates the word with food, of course. And thus her name is Haru now. And I like that the series shows this all from the cat's point of view as well. So we know this is not some spiritual connection or something, it's just coincidence. In fact, the cat is confused when Subaru keeps saying Haru and not immediately giving her more food, which is kind of funny. And I like the series' kind of realistic approach to this and not humanizing the cat too much. And yeah, I forgot to mention that earlier, but almost every episode in the series is basically a two-part story where we first see the things happening from Subaru's perspective, and then in the second half of the episode, we see it all again from Haru's point of view. It's great, it's interesting, keeps things fresh, and does a good job at explaining the world that Haru sees without, like I said, humanizing her too much. There are some parts where she has kind of like a too human way of thinking for a cat, but a lot of times this feels like it's a very animal-esque train of thought, only coherently verbalized by a human voice naturally, so the viewer can empathize a bit better. Anyway, this moment strengthens the bond between these two characters, and Subaru being happy about the thought of having some kind of family again is really heartwarming. Like, there are several moments in this show that are like that, and I think they are very well written and don't come across too cheesy or too hammy and rang really true, and I like that a lot. Another scene is Subaru drawing a parallel to his mom buying him fancy sweaters because she loved to dress him up. He draws a parallel to him choosing a color for Haru he likes. At first he's like, why is this so important? Why do I even need, why is this so difficult? Why do I even need to choose a color for her? And then he remembers that scene between him and his mom. And yeah, he's like, oh, okay, well, it was important to my mom. And this is important to me because Haru is important to me. So I guess that is all right. He admits that this is a bit self-serving, that it's not really for the good of the cat. Like, you know, his mom dressing him up in fancy clothes wasn't really for his own well-being necessarily, but that it made the person who did that happy. And so, yeah, he can accept that this makes him happy, and that's why he wants to do this. Kawase, the editor, really likes cats as well, but can't have one because his wife is allergic. I guess that sounds familiar, John.
A little bit.
Yeah. So he decides to come over often because he wants to play with Haru, which kind of backfires because Haru hates him. Because he's too, like, overbearing and always wants to play with her. He's like, go away. You're creeping me out. But I think he also wants to make Subaru come out of his shell and connect with him as well. So this is a good excuse to become part of Subaru's life and help him out. Kawase is a really good guy, and you get the feeling that he's trying to look out for Subaru and trying to like integrate him into society again. And yeah, Haru is the catalyst that slowly expands Subaru's world. He befriends Nana, the clerk from the pet store, because she knows a lot about cats, naturally. And also her brother, who turns out to be a big fan of Subaru and his writing, without knowing that he wrote those books. But, you know, he mentions it by chance, and then, yeah, Subaru is kind of flabbergasted because he has never personally met someone who likes his work and who cherishes it. It enables Subaru for the first time to experience someone cherishing and adoring his work and how and explain to him how that enriches their lives, which of course helps Subaru gain some self-confidence and recognize his own worth again, and giving a bit of help climbing out of that spiral of depression and self-hatred. It's one of those little baby steps and little pieces of the puzzle that help him slowly become more self-confident again and be more happy in his life. And I really like how realistically the show portrays how such a small thing like a pet can change your life for the better. And I speak from experience here because my mom is a social worker. And when she lost her job a couple of years ago because of downsizing, she was heartbroken and in a really bad place. And then we got our new dogs, and she decided to train them as therapy dogs. And now she helps kids from difficult upbringings, and the dogs help her find an immediate connection to the kids, because most kids like dogs. And that enables her to give them the educational treatment they need. And she's super happy with her new work life now, and none of that would have been possible if we didn't have dogs. So, yeah. Small things can have a big effect. And speaking of moms, I think one of the strongest scenes in the show is when Subaru finds his mom's old photo album and for the first time really faces his feelings about his parents' passing and his regrets for not spending more time with them. And that comes from a really emotionally earnest place and really pulled me in. And that is followed by a big scene where he connects more with Haru as a result, because she feels that he's not okay and comes up to him to make it right in a way, or she doesn't feel comfortable because he doesn't feel comfortable. And that scene just fucking killed me. I was lying in my bed Saturday morning watching a dumb cartoon about a boy and his cat, and I was bawling my fucking eyes out. It was great. It was a fantastically staged scenes, incredibly well directed, very emotional, great soundtrack, not too sappy. It just worked, and I understood both these characters very well. And that might be a very personal thing, because pets connecting with humans always gets me in movies, in books, in TV series. And the show doesn't pretend like Haru knew exactly what Subaru was going through, so that she decided to console him because of that, because that would be ridiculous. And I think it's a bit silly. The show is tapping into the superstition that cats can see ghosts, which the show says is the reason why Haru was being so rowdy, because she can see the ghosts of Subaru's parents kind of haunting him and trying to fight them off throughout the episode. That was the silly part. But, you know, let's just say she knew something was up, and that she felt, I don't know, some kind of aura or whatever you want to call it, some kind of bad emotion seeping out of him, and he wasn't behaving right. And that she could help him by showing a gesture of affection or concern. And you can take the literal ghosts in the show just as a metaphor for emotional unrest, or, like I said, dark aura, or whatever you want to call it, surrounding Subaru. The thing is, cats and dogs can be very empathic beings who can sense something is not right with you. And that is not a superstition. They may not understand it, but they know that you are not okay and want to change that, want to make that right. And I've had that experience with my dogs a lot of times, where I was just like trapped in a bad loop in my head, not even giving any conscious outside notifiers of that at all, but not wanting to talk about it with anyone either. And my dog just coming up to me out of nowhere for no discernible reason and putting a paw on my leg or arm and being like, "Hey, you okay, buddy? You need something? I'm here, you know." And again, of course, that's me putting thoughts into my dog's head. The real thoughts were probably something like, human weird, be normal again. But sometimes that is all you need to get through a bad day. And the show captures that kind of moment, that kind of experience beautifully. Some form of emotional connection that might be highly imaginary on your part, on our part, but helps you to get out of your own head and contextualize your feelings. And I think it's great that a show tried to do this and did it very well. And I connected to that a lot. And like I said, this might be a personal thing. Some of you might never have had that kind of experience, but I did, and that's why I was like pulled in by the show immediately, especially in those moments. And yeah, I think this is a fantastic little emotional show that, even though it works through some darker stuff, clearly has an uplifting message. I would definitely categorize it as an Yashike or healing anime. We have at least reviewed one of those before. No, I think two. Sweetness and Lightning and Flying Witch kind of fall into that genre. And maybe we reviewed some others too. But yeah, just one of those slow-paced, laid-back, comfy shows that will immediately put you in a good mood, maybe make you shed a few tears here and there, but generally spread cozy vibes. It's also very funny and cute. How much you like it will probably depend on whether you have owned a pet before or not, because if not, there might not be the instant emotional connection there, but I'd say give it a chance regardless, especially since it's only 12 episodes. I think the only thing about the show that disappointed me a bit was the OP makes it look like the crazy stories Subaru comes up with for his mystery novels through Haru's inspiration and by him watching her and studying her would be a bigger part of the story, but they really aren't featured at all. You sometimes see him narrating the things she does a bit and read a line from his books or something, but it's never like that those two characters are suddenly transported into a fantasy world where Haru is the assassin and trying to kill Subaru or something. That never happens, and the OP makes it look like it does. But I guess they wanted to keep something more fantastical out of the show and out of the visuals, which I can understand. But still, it feels like a bit of a missed opportunity for fun hijinks, shenanigans times, and draw a bit more from the comedy side of things. But otherwise, it's all great. You can watch it on Crunchyroll and Funimation. And don't skip on the stingers after the end credits, because they're also great and sometimes complete the story. But yeah, cats are great, dogs are great, all the other pets out there are great. And if you didn't have a pet in your life yet and don't have any allergies that keep you from it sadly permanently, maybe this show will make you reconsider getting one. It definitely reminded me how grateful I can be for all the family members, friends, and pets I have shared my life with. And I hope it can bring some of those positive feelings into your lives as well.
Okay, so that was nice and heartwarming.
Now to switch gears.
I unfortunately have to switch gears to something that I watched that was less heartwarming. So, The Magnificent KOTOBUKI, or, since we're apparently now giving Japanese names, Koya no Kotobuki Hikotai. The Magnificent KOTOBUKI follows the exploits of this squadron of fighters called the, Kotobuki Squadron. It's in a barren frontier where people trade goods with each other in order to help one another survive. And the Kotobuki are bodyguards for hire, led by a strict but beautiful squadron leader, an unreliable commanding officer, and a true artisan of a crew chief. Alongside pilots who don't lack for personality, they take to the air in dogfights letting the engine noise of their Hayabusa fighters ring out in the skies. This this show is an interesting specimen.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about who executed on the animation production first. It's a little studio called Gemba,
That sounds
whose
familiar.
whose name has come up in the past when we talked about your favorite, the adaptations of Berserk.
Yeah.
Yes, this show involves CG.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk more about that in a mo. But some of the other stuff that Gemba has worked on is they've done CG in some of like the Pokemon and Resident Evil movies. They did, I think, the second Macross Frontier movie, one of the Psycho-Pass movies, and then they did some work on the first Super Robot Wars original generation series.
Was that the Inspector?
No, the Inspector was the second series.
Oh,
The first series was, I think, Divine Wars. Yes. Um, and the show was directed by Tsutomu Mizushima, who's worked on stuff such as Blood Sea, a whole bunch of the Crayon Shinchan movies, Genshiken,
Mm.
Girls und Panzer,
Mm.
and Squid Girl, the perennial favorite. That show is interesting. It's fun, but it's a thing, that's for sure. So let's start off talking about what I like about this show. I think it has an interesting setup with this like all girl fighter squadron they're out to make a buck however they can, being these guns for hire, and it's got that sort of neat setup. And I will say that the dogfights in the show, so good. I said at the top of the season that hopefully this show would scratch that itch until the next Macross, and I think in that respect it did, because the dogfights are really fast and exciting and engaging and have a lot of really good and dynamic camera work, and it's really that's definitely the highlight of the show, and it's really great and it's really fun to watch. Probably another one of the highlights of the show is the music, which was done by Shiro Hamaguchi, who's worked on stuff like Oh My Goddess, like a whole bunch of, again, the Crayon Shin-chan movies, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, FF Unlimited, Hanasaku Iroha, worked a bit on One Piece and Sakura Wars, and arranged the music for Final Fantasies 7 through 11, Monster Hunter, and Unlimited Saga. And if you know anything about the music from those games, you know they are really damn good soundtracks. Mm-hmm. And again, this show does not disappoint on that front, because it has this big sweeping orchestral soundtrack that's really engaging and really great, and it gets you in the moment, and yeah, it's awesome.
Cool.
The show has a lot of shortcomings, though. And one of the shortcomings I feel like is with the characters, because this show has a large cast. The most that they really give a lot of time to is the main character, Kylie. And she's this spunky, plucky, I'm gonna go fly around like a pro and shoot a whole bunch of shit down because I'm a little spitfire. Cool. All right. But she's, sort of overzealous in what she does, and she gets herself in trouble a few times, more than a few times. But we kind of see where that comes from, because she has these flashbacks to this pilot that she met, that we only ever know him as Old Sab. He's this grizzled old guy. He's like, oh, you don't want to, why do you want to get to know me? I'm just some old burnout. But he takes Kylie up into the skies in his plane, and that really, fosters her interest and love for flying, and that's what really gets her going on this path of hers. And it's a really neat story, and you can tell there's a lot of emotion behind it, because you see this very unlikely friendship form between this little girl and this grizzled old guy, and it's it's neat, it's interesting.
Is he kind of like the father figure? And is she an orphan, or does she still are her parents still around?
Here's the thing. A lot of other stuff isn't touched on nearly as well or as thoroughly. Like, I can give you the Cliff's Notes versions of all of the other characters, but beyond that, the amount of character development in the show is close to non-existent. It, it feels like each character is just there to be their archetype. Like, there's one girl, Kate, who's very sort of stoic and quiet and very.
Does she have blue hair?
I think she had white hair.
Oh, yeah, that works too.
There's Riona, who's the captain of the Kotobuki unit, and she's, very, you have to stay on target and stay on task. There's Zara, who is very sort of airy and easygoing, and she was one of the co-founders of the Kotobuki unit. There's Chika, who's even younger than Kylie, and she's just a dumb little shit who's there because she is okay.
That sure sounds like a lot of anime girl archetypes. So like, hey, which kind of girl do you like? We have all of them in this show.
A lot of the show felt like it was just, in that regard, it was just ticking off check boxes. They kind of try to go a little deeper on the relationship between Riona and Zara. I'm going to have to give a spoiler warning later on. I'm not going to go into it yet, but there's reasons why I just was kind of like towards the end with a lot of this stuff. So like I said, this show is not wanting for a cast because after the Kotobuki's first mission, where they are escorting this Zeppelin, the town that they go to is filled with all sorts of crazy, weird characters, like the wishy-washy mayor of the town who can't decide whether or not he wants to give in to the demands of these sky pirates or whether or not they should be taken down and taken care of. A true politician through and through. There's this other guy named Isao who is this, oh, I'm such a goofy random guy. I'm the head of this trading company. Becomes the mayor of another city later on. It's revealed that in the past he had helped Riona in another skirmish, and Riona feels sort of indebted to him and is, wants to pay that debt back because, doesn't want to leave, a debt unpaid. And sure, okay, that's something I can plug into. All right, screw it. This is your spoiler warning. This is your spoiler warning. This is your spoiler warning. Right. So later on, it's sort of revealed that Isao is bad because he is.
Just for reasons?
For reasons.
Is he Cobra Commander?
Not
okay.
I wouldn't say it like that, but he's just...
He's a villain for being a villain's sake, because the show needs an antagonist or something, and a twist.
Yeah, so... This show would have been so much better if the story was just like an episodic, like, the girls went on this mission. This thing happened. Let's dive more into the backstory of this character. There's another mission. That sort of thing. No. No, that's not what happens. We have to dive into the stupid mysticism side that doesn't mesh with the rest of the story at all.
What?
So, it's discovered that there are these holes in the sky that start forming, like, above, like, different towns in different parts of the world. And for some reason, Isao has been seeking out these holes because they lead to this other world that's rife with, all sorts of riches and tech and interesting goodies and whatnot. And I'll get to that stupid plot point about what the holes actually are later. And it doesn't work. And I don't know if they went with this sort of thing because, hey, guess what I found out after the fact? It ties in with a mobile game. So if you wanna pull your pilot waifus, you gotta play the fucking mobile game.
But wait, came the mobile game first, or
I think it was
meant to be
a promo piece.
Oh, okay.
One of those, I forget what they're calling them now, like multimedia or cross-media projects.
Cross-media things, yeah.
Yeah.
That worked out so well for Final Fantasy 15.
I mean, Brotherhood was good. Brotherhood was great, actually.
Brotherhood was actually really good, yes. But, the whole intersecting story path between Kingsglaive and the actual game did not work at all.
Yeah. I mean, I still have not watched Kingsglaive, so I don't know for myself. But,
yeah. I watched Kingsglaive. I haven't played the game, but a friend who watched Kingsglaive with me and then played the game says there's so much in that game that never gets mentioned, that happens only in Kingsglaive, and your character miss out on so much of the story that happens in the fucking movie. None of this works, at least to quote him. So it sounds like cross media rarely is one of those things that pans out.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the game because I don't think it exists in English. I think it's only in Japanese. But my takeaway from the end of this show was like, yeah, I'm not interested, thanks. Yeah, Isao is bad because he is. I don't. So they don't really even foreshadow it. He just sort of is like, yeah, we need to do the thing. See those holes? All of that shit belongs to me.
Okay.
Great, dude. So the holes basically brought the tech that belonged to another town that no longer exists called Yufang. And the people from Yufang, I hope you're ready for this. I really hope you're ready for this. They called themselves Japanese.
What?
So the holes are basically a direct portal to Japan because fucking why
not? Sure. All right.
And at that point, I was just, when they revealed that plot point, that happens in the 11th episode. That's one episode from the end. And it's like,
wait, so this is a reverse isekai show, kinda, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't work either way. It's shit either way.
After Isao extols the virtue of the holes, he declares war on the other two big settlements, Rahama and Poroka. And it's like, okay, dude, why did you feel the need to do that? If you just wanted to go into the holes and be a weeb, no one would have bat an eye. There's another part. They kind of try to insinuate that there's a relationship between Riona and Zara. It doesn't work. In the last episode, in the final confrontation, Zara says to Riona something on the lines of, hey, you and I could just run away from this. And it's like, this doesn't feel earned at all. Because they kind of hint at it in one scene in an earlier episode, and then forget it, push that aside. That's not important.
It sure sounds like this series should have had a couple of more episodes, or that's what they were trying to do, and for some reason it didn't happen.
It sounds to me like this show was written by committee, to be honest.
Yeah, that's
when I got through watching this, that's kind of the feeling I got, because I was like, it starts off really interesting. And you know what? I'm going to say it. The CG in this show is fine. It's not It's not offensive. I think it's actually fine. Some of the character animations aren't great, but they're not terrible. It's not the worst I've ever seen.
It's not Berserk, is what you're saying.
No. What really kind of depresses me, though, is when there's CG and traditionally drawn characters in the same frame because the regular art it looks fine. It doesn't like you're thinking, oh, they went with CG because their traditional animators couldn't hack it. No, that's not the case at all. And here's the really weird thing. There's episodes where some of the main girls are wearing different outfits, and when they're wearing different outfits, they're not CG.
Okay, so they didn't code models for the different outfits or okay.
They only have one character model for their regular normal outfits, and beyond that, it's just, oh, they're going to be hand-drawn animated. Why?
Yeah.
I really honestly feel like it should have been all or nothing because, like I said, the CG characters, it's not the worst I've seen. I remember seeing the promo videos for before the show started, and I was kind of like, but then I started watching it. I was like, okay, it's. I can watch this. I can watch this and be fine with this. That didn't put me off. But this like half-hearted approach, just like, guys, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. It's got to be one way or the other. And I feel like this has become a theme for me, where you can't be wishy-washy. You just got to do it. You need to commit.
Yeah, you need to do something and not just, now I'm doing that. Now I'm doing that. Now I'm doing that. Let's just try a bit. I mean, I really don't like this approach of combining traditional drawn character models for the side characters and then CG models for the main characters. Kato, the right answer, already did that, and I hated that. I really did. I thought that took me out completely off the show. That's why I never gave Kotobuki a chance, because I was seeing it was doing the same thing. Even though I have to agree that the CG models didn't look bad. So, but, the combination of some characters being CG, some not, it's just like, why? Why would you even do that? There's no reason for this. Even if, your animation quality drops or something, if you have to do more hand-drawn stuff, that is still more... I don't know, that's still more engaging or keeps you more engaged and doesn't pull you out of the show than if you combine these two styles that don't mesh. Because there is just a straightforward, visible difference between CG characters and 2D characters. And even if the animators think we're at a point right now where you can tell the difference, I can always tell. I can always tell.
Yes. Like, even though the quality on both sides is fine in this show, you can still, you can look at it and say, oh, I see the difference. Clearly you can. And I just looked it up now. I meant to actually before we started recording, but I didn't have a chance to. I wanted to look up and see if I could find like Blu-ray rips and see if they did something different, but I can't find any Blu-ray rips. I was just searching for them, and I wanted to see if they had changed or did something different for the home video version, and I don't know. Maybe they'll start popping up later on, and I'll be able to find that out. But I'm actually really curious about that, because with Berserk they cleaned up a lot of it for the Blu-ray, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
So yeah,
I mean, I haven't checked out the Blu-rays because I'm done with that series. But still,
I don't blame you.
But apparently they did, yes. But there is also an approach to this whole thing that works, and that is doing all of the characters in CG for specific scenes. And Dragon Ball does that a lot. In the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie, there are scenes where both Goku and Broly are CG, so they can use more dynamic camera perspectives and everything, and tracking shots and all that stuff. Because that works better in CG than or it's not as expensive, not as work intensive in CG as it is in 2D and traditional animation. And that works great if it's done right. Like, I thought that movie looked fantastic, and I could always tell again when it was CG, but it didn't pull me out, because then in those moments all the characters, were CG, everything, the environments were already CG in some parts. So it worked, it meshed, it fit together in a way. And One Piece did that too in some of its recent movies. So yeah, you can do that. But if you do, like, an entire series, or almost entire series, unless the characters wear different outfits, apparently, where you have characters that are traditionally animated in the same scene talking to characters that are CG but are clearly supposed to be both human and not one is not a weird alien or something. It's just, in my opinion, it does not work. It does not work at all.
No.
I hope they stop this. I hope they never try this again. I cannot see this working ever.
I don't know if it was a cost-cutting measure.
I doubt it.
I don't think we'll ever know, but yeah, I mean, that aside, like I said, the plot of this show devolved into absolute nonsense. The character development for if your name wasn't Kylie or Old Sab was miserable. Okay. Like even the captain of the Hagoromo, Sanayatsu, he's just shown to be this incompetent, dumbass loser. And they try to give him these moments of redemption, and even in those moments, he still comes across like a loser. And it's like, you're not endearing this character to anyone. And Madame Lulu, who's the like the big head of like the Oni company, who's like that's involved in sorts of transportations of goods and materials, and she works with the Kotobuki and all the other characters. She's so one note. Everyone is one note.
Does the show immediately start with some weird science fiction?
No, it doesn't start with that at all. It just comes out of fucking nowhere. And one of the side characters who has apparently been researching this was like for however long, we don't know. It's like, yeah, these holes are going to be a thing, are a thing when they start appearing later on in the show. And I'm just sort of like sitting here scratching my head saying, what? Huh? I wish this show was better than it was, because it starts off neat and then it just spirals so far downhill. And I would honestly say the two main reasons to watch this show are the dogfights, because they're fucking incredible, and the music, because it's also great. Beyond that, the show just, it exists. Go watch Macross.
Yeah, and then again, you can listen to the music by just listening to the soundtrack, and that only leaves the dogfights, which is a bit of a slim.
Yeah. This show left me really disappointed, but I don't know. I don't see it really coming back for another go around and maybe improving on what it did.
Is the story finished? Like, is that weird? Do they go to Japan? I mean, that's super spoilery, I guess. But
Isao, over the town where the final showdown happens, a gigantic hole appears, and Isao's like, I'm going to take control of this hole. It's mine. And he flies into it. And Sanayatsu sends the Hagoromo flying in after it, and it's like loaded for bear, just chock full of explosives. They detonate the Hagoromo after it reaches the hole in order to seal the hole and to leave Isao on the other side. And it's like, okay, that ending sure was a wet fart.
Especially since, like you mentioned earlier, it's why wasn't he just going over there just in the first place? And
like, it seemed like he could have just gone back and forth and no one would have batted an eye.
Yeah.
And he just could have been like, oh, look at this cool tech I discovered. Isn't it neat? Where'd you get that?
Yeah, it kind of feels like the villain making life for himself harder by doing what he does. Like in Kokoku with the main villain, who's like, hey, if you had just talked to these people or left them alone, then you could have actually realized your dream more effectively. And it sounds like Izawa is the same kind of wrong-headed character type.
No, but he's goofy. Ha ha ha. Look at how random I am. Oh, I do magic tricks. I'm a really good pilot. Shut up.
Okay, seems like there's no real enjoyment in that, even though it sounded funny.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that really baffles my mind is the show had 3 writers, and apparently they couldn't put their heads together in order to
Not
make
too
this
many cooks.
work, even though each of them individually have worked on better stuff than this.
Maybe one should have taken the lead, or I don't know, that it should have been a single experience.
I don't know, but this show, I don't know whether or not to say it's worth watching other than the dogfights, but if you're really that curious about the magnificent Kotobuki, you can tune into it on either Crunchyroll or High Dive, and if you do that, I'm curious to know what our viewers' thoughts are on the show if they do decide to check it out, because like I said, I think the show is really lacking and really it starts off strong and interesting, and then it just falls apart one episode at a time. But hey, it's just my opinion, man.
All right, time to return to the positive pitch and talk about some sports anime action again, baby.
Sports.
The only thing that is more interesting in anime no, that's not true. There are many things that are more interesting in anime than in real life. Anyway, the last show in today's episode is the newest iteration in one of the longest running sports manga and anime franchises in existence. But might not be that recognizable in the US because it's about soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, that is Captain Tsubasa. And that is a series I grew up with because it ran over here for a while, for a long time. There were a couple of soccer shows, actually, soccer anime that ran over here, naturally, because Germany is a fucking soccer/football country. Among a lot of my classmates who still watched cartoons in their early teenage years, this was a very popular show. It's based on a manga by Yuichi Takahashi, which was originally released between 1981 and 1988. And the manga got a bunch of sequel/remake mangas. I'm not sure. One of the later mangas is named like the remake anime from 2001, but I think that's still a different story because apparently Tsubasa is much more grown up in that. I'm not quite sure on the details there because I haven't read the manga series. But still, there is one currently running since 2013. So franchise is still going strong, I guess. The first anime adaptation that I mentioned earlier, that I watched as a kid, ran from 1983 to 1986 in Japan. Came over to us much later. I think I watched it in 1992 or 93. It got a bunch of movies and sequel series, a remake in 2001, like I said before, and now another remake in 2018. Also a bunch of video games and other stuff, naturally. I think there's a bunch of Captain Tsubasa games for the Super Nintendo, for example. So yeah, what is this series even about? Well, it's about a 11-year-old boy, Tsubasa Ozora, who loves soccer. I'm going to call it soccer to avoid confusion from now on, and because I don't always want to say football/soccer, whatever.
Fair enough.
But for the purists out there, it's actually football, yada, yada, yada. But yes, Tsubasa loves soccer. Indeed, he even considers the ball his friend, ever since holding onto a soccer ball saved Tsubasa from getting run over by a truck as a toddler. And since his earliest childhood, he dreamt of becoming a pro soccer player and leading Japan to the World Cup championship. So when he and his mom moved to the city of Nankatsu, which is a fictional town, by the way, his dream starts to become reality. First, he makes some new friends at his new elementary school and joins the soccer club. Then he draws the attention of the best goalkeeper in the area, Genzo Wakabayashi, and challenges him to a duel. And lastly, he's confronted by Roberto Hongo, one of the best young soccer players from Brazil, who, by chance, is in Japan. We, of course, later find out that this is not quite a chance encounter. But regardless, Roberto offers to train Tsubasa and him and the Nankatsu soccer club team. and promises him to take him to the country of soccer, Brazil, if Tsubasa can become the best soccer player in Japan. Naturally, Tsubasa is fired up, because he loves soccer, but the road to the national championship, of course, is long and hard, and Tsubasa will meet many tough opponents, rivals, and new friends on the way. So this new adaptation of the first 2 arcs of the original manga, namely Kid's Dream and Boy's Fight, is handled by David Production. And if that rings a bell, you might have listened to at least one of our reviews of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yeah.
Not only that, but this show was directed by Toshiyuki Kato, who was the series director for the 4th series of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Diamond is Unbreakable, a show we both unconditionally love, I think.
Yeah.
With good reason. He was also a storyboard artist and episode director on the previous seasons of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, among a bunch of other stuff. But I think especially the same sensibilities and vision that shines through in his work on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is very prominent in Captain Tsubasa as well. You have a bunch of great exaggerated action shots and camera perspective, wild camera movement, super colorful scene compositions, like, these negative effects that we often have in JoJo's where the colors are reversed and stuff like that. You also have that in Captain Tsubasa. Great line work, amazingly staged shots, and play encounters that are pretty much scenes from a shonen tournament battle series. Like, this is war, people. Soccer is serious business after all. No, it isn't. There are also some nice eye catchers with player stats. Also kind of like JoJo, and formation info before each important match. So yeah, just great stuff to look at. The sound direction is once again done by Yoshikazu Iwanami, who also was responsible for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Sword Art Online, Planet With, and a bunch of other things. And if you have seen those shows, you know what kind of sound he's going for. It's this, like, especially when it comes to the sound effects, when in this case someone kicks a soccer ball, or in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure some enemy stand appears or attacks someone else. It's like these crackling, powerful sound effects, sound designs, who are very recognizable and give the action scenes in the show the necessary amount of oomph. It's like this big,
like very sort of bassy, very sort of powerful sound.
Yeah, it's really, if you have a surround sound system, he is one of those guys that makes really good use of your subwoofer. It's really good stuff. I enjoy his sound work a lot. Chief animation director is Hajime Watanabe, who, among other things, was responsible for the key animation in the very first Captain Tsubasa anime, so the legacy credit is there as well. And yeah, in my opinion, this is a great-looking, a very dynamically directed and animated show. Sure, not all games are super well animated. There are some off-model characters here and there, and, some more stiff and janky animation when they, obviously trying to save some money. This is a long show, this is 52 episodes. But overall, the presentation in that series is great and pulls you in immediately, just like the presentation in JoJo does. That also sometimes cuts a few corners here and there, but when it counts, it always looks great. And so does Captain Tsubasa, in my opinion. Yeah, presentation is great. That includes the soundtrack by Hayato Matsuo. Also did the soundtrack for The World God Only Knows, Drifters, Hellsing Ultimate, Kamen Rider Faiz, fucking Guyver Bio Boosted Armor, and of course, a couple of episodes of JoJo's and everyone's darling, Keijo!
Heyo!
I'm always glad when we get to mention Keijo again.
Reset the timer on mentions for Keijo.
Yeah. Man, there's a show that should get a sequel. Anyway.
But the author got super screwed though, so it's just unfortunate, but because it deserved more than it got, even though, God, that show was way better than it should have been.
Definitely, it was silly as fuck, but it was super entertaining and engaging. So, and the music was good, and so is the music in Captain Tsubasa. It's fantastic, actually. Just the right amount of ridiculous, over-the-top orchestral arrangements that make you feel like you're watching the most epic fight on the face of the planet when it's just a bunch of guys kicking a leather ball around. but it feels like fucking life and death, son. It's really like some of the tracks might become a bit repetitive over time, especially if you binge that show, but just Tsubasa's theme when he attacks, and when things get really, really dire on the field and everything, and there's a rousing speech or whatever, just the music swells up and shit gets crazy, and then a super attack and the music explodes, the subwoofer explodes, the screen explodes with colors and action and everything, and I explode as well. And it's great. Everyone is having a fun time. And also interesting little tidbit. I think the ending is always sung by a different cast member.
Oh.
And since this is a big cast, there's some really out there and funny interpretation, because not all of the cast members can sing, but they still try though.
Oh boy.
That's great. That's great. Actually, I stopped watching the show for 2 months because I had to catch up with some other shows and couldn't make the time for it. And then I picked it back up again and was immediately pulled back in by the power of its presentation. So I think that's saying a lot. Story-wise, there is not that much happening. Just like with a lot of sports anime. It's Tsubasa playing a couple of random games in the beginning, like, meeting friends, all the good stuff, and finding its way and establishing himself as like the top player and everything, and the hope for this Nankatsu soccer club. And then it's a small tournament that decides the selection for the national tournament, the Nankatsu selection for the national tournament. And after that, said big national elementary school tournament happens, and thus ends the first arc, Kid's Dream, and then we move over to the next arc, Boys Fight, do a 3-year time skip, and almost immediately start the big national tournament of the 3rd year of middle school. And all the crazy, over-the-top bullshit is in there that made me fall in love with sports anime in the first place. Like, we have talked about some sports anime before, but this one is definitely going in the corner of Yowamushi Paddle, Kuroko's Basketball, where this is basically, like I said, a tournament action show. This is basically like a fighting show, only on the soccer pitch. This is just ridiculous, over-the-top nonsense from beginning to end. Everyone being super serious and super dramatic and doing things that should not be possible for a human being. And it's fantastic. Haikyuu is a more realistic approach, but this is definitely this is the Hajime no Ippo of soccer anime, I guess. And yeah, everything you'd want out of that, if you like that kind of shit, is in here. Awesome characters, big emotions, special shots, like special moves, fouls that would lead to red cards for the entire opposing team at once. In fact, why not? Let me just rattle off a selection of the dumb, hyper-enjoyable nonsense that happens in this show about fucking soccer. Legs engulfed in lightning from a clash. Eagles spreading their wings because the ball becomes the eagle. The ball, in fact, also becomes a tiger and runs towards the fucking goal. People getting thrown in the air from tackles, and the shots of the big rival of Tsubasa, Kojiro Hyuga, who is like this super powerhouse, who's like this no-nonsense player, is like, my way of soccer is the right way, and I'm gonna play it, and I'm gonna destroy everyone who stands in my way. And he just tackles everyone out of the way, like just fucking rams them out of the way, which immediately he would be taken out of the game after 2 of those moves if this was a real soccer match. And when he shoots the ball, everyone who tries to stand in the way of that ball just gets thrown to the side of the fucking field. Jesus. And it's amazing. What else do we have? Like I said, stuff that would get you immediately red carded in real life. Just a bunch of shit. Just a bunch of the nastiest fucking fouls that are basically like fucking martial arts moves. The feared offside trap, which is a super standard move in soccer. But in this, it's staged like it's this like craziest Kira from Death Note master mind game play ever. It's like, oh my god, how did they do that? It's so fucking dumb, but it's fantastic. In the second arc, everyone gets a special shot. like I said, the ball gets lit on fire and turns into a hawk or a tiger or whatever. One of the teams, Meiwa, that Kojiro Hyuga plays for in the first arc, has like this special sliding squad where a bunch of players do sliding tackles at the same time, and when they do, you hear the sound of machine gun fire.
What?
It's great. It's just fantastic. Tsubasa learns a new shot in the second arc. This is like his trick shot, his big thing, and it's called the drive shot, which is like has this weird arc where it first travels into the air and then just descends at hyperspeed for the goal, which is not possible. Just ignoring all rules of gravity and physics, and becomes, like I said, like a hawk. And there's this scene where five people have to stop the captain who is trying to block Tsubasa's ball from being pushed into the goal by the fucking shot. It's so ridiculous, and I love it. I love it to death. It's the dumbest shit. There is a move, I can't stop, sorry. There is a move where two brothers, twins actually, the Tachibana twins, jump on each other's legs, and the one catapults the other like 1,000 feet into the air so that he can launch a deadly shot from above. And that move is called the Skylab Hurricane. And the episode where it's shown off, where it debuts, ends on a picture of a space station, which is fucking brilliant. It's fucking amazing. Skylab Hurricane! Cut! You see a space station in the background and the episode ends. It's the best thing. It's the best fucking thing. That show does not take itself seriously at all. I mean, all the characters act like this is the most serious thing, but you know that the creators don't give a shit. Like, it's in all the right ways. And I think, well, let's give two more before I give all the stuff away from this show. The team that Tsubasa's rival is on also has a literal karate goalkeeper who chops and kicks the ball away like it's a karate attack. And it's amazing. He's also a really cool dude. Wakashimatsu is amazing. He's very nice. And not is he only a literal karate goalkeeper, he also saved a dog's life from an oncoming truck, which seems to be a running theme in this show. Trucks are dangerous, which is how he hurt his shoulder, actually, which is kind of a small plot point in several of the games, but whatever. And, okay, the final one, which was one of my favorites. Kojiro Hyuga, the powerhouse character, kicks the ball so hard into Nankatsu's replacement goalkeeper's face, whose name is Morisaki, that the replacement keeper gets PTSD from it, and it is afraid to go for the ball until Tsubasa stops another goal by letting himself get hit in the face on purpose to show Morisaki that the ball is their friend. It's all so ridiculous and stupid, but played with such earnestness that you can't help but love it. You laugh at it, you love it, you enjoy it. It's amazing. This is what I go for in sports anime. I love the realistic ones too, like Haikyuu, but this dumb shit, this is my jam. This is my absolute jam. I adore it. Yeah, there's some more serious notes in the show as well, like character-wise, like Roberto, for example, Roberto Hongo. He loves Tsubasa, he loves to train him, he adores looking how Tsubasa grows and becomes like this soccer prodigy, like this genius player, and he recognizes a lot of himself in him. But he's also conflicted because at some point he realizes he doesn't want to take Tsubasa away from his family and his friends because he is afraid that he is only projecting his dream on him. Because Roberto actually can't play soccer anymore since he has, I think, a retinal detachment or something like that. Yes, that's what it was. And that actually led to him doing a suicide attempt. And Tsubasa's father, who is a captain on a ship, actually saved him. He saved him from drowning. So, there are darker undertones here and there, definitely, but mostly it's lighthearted fun. In terms of how well this is adapted from the source material, which, is an older manga, they slightly modernized it. Everyone has smartphones and tablets, which obviously they didn't have in the manga and in the old series, in the first anime, which brings some problems with it here and there, because it makes it a bit hard to believe that they completely lose to one of their teammates who leaves the team after the first tournament. But generally they do a good job of, adapting or putting that story in our current time. Of course, now there are also flat screen TVs and stuff like that, which didn't exist in that old thing. I think a lot of scenes were when they were still listening to the radio in that show. Actually, didn't always watch TV.
This sounds like it kind of taps into my problem with Banana Fish, where they tried to modernize it and I felt like it fell flat. Because considering the era that this show is originally from, I feel like watching that and seeing that would probably bother the shit out of me.
Maybe. It's not that prominent, though. There are some key scenes, like I said, when, you see, okay, why would they lose contact to that one guy? Like, it's not like in the olden days where they would have to write letters or couldn't immediately get into contact with him or something. Some of those story points just don't work anymore. But, they try to talk around it a bit. But it rarely happens, because most of the story of this series takes place on the soccer field. And that doesn't change. Like, that doesn't need to change, because those are where most of the character interactions happens, and where the characters talk to each other through their play and stuff like that, So it's not as irritating as it probably is in Banana Fish for some people, because some of the story, a lot of the story hinges on characters being at a certain place and not communicating even though they could, and that leads to shit going awry even though it shouldn't, stuff like that. That doesn't really happen in Captain Tsubasa.
Okay.
But yeah, still, it's you would notice it. There are some moments definitely where you can see, okay, this is an older series that they're trying to modernize, and it doesn't always work, but mostly it does. And yeah, other points in terms of adaptation, some matches are slimmed way down. This new show only has 52 episodes, while the original one had a whopping 128.
Damn.
And the remake from 2001 had 52 as well, but that one was even more slimmed down, I think, because it also contained a couple of later arcs, while this one only contains the first 2. So I think in terms of density, this is a good middle ground, even though the final match runs a bit too long, maybe. Like in elementary school, one half runs 20 minutes, and in middle school 30. Real adult games go 45 for each half. But, having a 1 hour match last about 7 episodes, which is what the final game is, borders on DBZ time. But then again, Haikyuu's entire 10-episode third season was one match, and that didn't feel too long at all. There was a lot of character development in there and great action scenes and everything, so that worked. So I guess it doesn't really matter as long as enough interesting stuff is happening. And I guess the final match in this show is a bit too much back and forth, where it's like, no, Tsubasa is so fucking broken and he's dead, but then he finds the spirit again and manages to score a goal again, and then he's broken again and his body falls apart, and then he finds the spirit again. And that happens a bit too often in the final match during the course of the 7 episodes, and you could have cut some of the stuff out of there. But then again, they probably were like, okay, we don't have that much more episodes to go, so we need to stretch this out a bit. So yeah, but aside from that, the pacing in the show is pretty damn good. Just only on the final stretch, you get the feeling that maybe 4 or 3 episodes would have done the job a bit better. But aside from that, I had nothing to complain. I think also the match order might have been mixed up a bit, because I remember there being a match against a club in the tournament in the original show that came in the beginning, like it was the very first match, and ran for quite a while. And here it is like the second match and doesn't even last half an episode or something, while it lasted multiple in the original. I don't I'm not quite sure because it's been a while since I've seen the original show, but I feel like some of the matches they decided to slim down a lot or put somewhere else in the storyline instead of where it was before. The character designs are, I don't remember them looking that mature in the old show. Like, it's okay when they're still like in elementary school, but they still look too old there. And, you know, once they're like the fifth graders look like 20-year-olds in this show, which, you know, is sometimes anime disease that happens. And sometimes, you know, 30-year-olds look like fucking 12-year-old girls or something. But this often happens, I guess, with other material as well. And in this show, it's also very prominent where it's like, these characters should not look that old. Like, Kojiro Hyuga is like, he's supposed to be, I don't know, 12 or 13, and he looks like a fucking 25-year-old or something. It's ridiculous. Just super muscular and everything. Get like fucking body of a tank. And I was like, that's not possible. This is ridiculous. He should already be high school or college the way he looks. So it's, I don't know, it's a bit old-fashioned, but it's fun. It's funny. And yeah, in terms of character development, this is a show with very simple characters. What you see is what you get. I guess that can be attributed to this also being very old source material. You know, even for a sports anime, this is kind of a bit bare bones. Like, Tsubasa has unwavering spirit, can deliver rousing motivational speeches, is like a really good guy, is a really good friend, and everything is nice to everyone. But he's kind of perfect aside from that. Like I said, he always finds his spirit, even if he stumbles here and there, maybe, and questions himself in one episode or another. But that rarely happens. He's always like straightforward. My dream is soccer, and I'm just gonna do this for me and my team and forward. And he's kind of an unstoppable force most of the time, which might be a bit boring for some people. And if the presentation wasn't so fucking amazing and everything else about the show, I probably would have lost interest. Like, if I didn't enjoy that stuff so much, because, you know, if you come from stuff like Haikyuu that has really great character development, like not even for a sports anime, but in general, it's just a fantastically written show. You know, if you come from Haikyuu and go to Captain Tsubasa, it's like, holy shit, this is a very simple show. So, you know, be aware of that. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. Immediately when you see the characters, you know what you get, like I said, and that can be enjoyable too. But don't expect those characters to go into an unexpected direction. There's one match against a club called Musashi, I think, where Tsubasa is not perfect because he is intimidated by the opposites team's captain's skill and resolve. But aside from that, he is a bit of a Gary Stu. And yeah, you also won't find some deeper emotional beats in this show like you can in something like Haikyuu. Like, very few players on the main team get any kind of development or even character backgrounds. They're just there. Every female manager is in love with the captain of their respective team. Like, every single one. It's like dreamy eyes. Oh, captain, my captain. It's kind of ridiculous. You really notice in those moments you notice that this is a very old, or this is based on a very old manga. But then again, if you can deal with that, if you can recognize and say, okay, this is a series from simpler times, it's totally fine. It's nothing offensive in there or anything. It's just like, yeah, sports anime has come a long way in terms of writing. Anime in general. This is a lot simpler. Some opposing players get some pretty good development instead of the characters from our main team. There's one character that has like health issues, and one character who has like a kind of difficult upbringing and stuff like that. So that's cool, and that of course makes the matches more engaging because at times you are rooting for both teams to win. For Nankatsu because they're the main character team and Tsubasa's on it, and for the other team because the captain or whoever is a bit more well developed, I guess. And yeah, there are some really good matches in this series, like really enjoyable stuff where the characters' ideologies and spirits clash. They do some interesting stuff with that, even though the characters, not all characters are necessarily super well developed. I would say the only difference is Kojiro Hyuga. He actually, which I didn't even remember, but he's actually the character with the most with the most development in this show, which you wouldn't expect when you see him, because he's like this really gruff piece of shit in the beginning, like downright asshole to his teammates, to the opposing teammates. He's arrogant. He's a very brutal, violent guy. He, like I said, just runs people over and just wants to score the goal, doesn't care about anything else. And then you learn that he does that he wants to become a pro soccer player to take care of his mom and siblings. So, there's that. Okay, he's actually, has noble motivation here. And then doing the course and clashing with Tsubasa and everything, and seeing his way of play and succeeding and everything, he becomes a different character, and even more so in the second arc. He learns to be humble. He learns to take his teammates' feelings and his teammates' needs more into consideration than his own. And that actually goes so far as that he begs the coach of his team to let him play, even though he stayed away from the team to train without telling everyone. And in previous times, he would have been too proud for that. Like, he was, like I said, an arrogant asshole. But you see that he has learned, that he has developed, and that he is trying to lead his team to victory, and that it's not all about him anymore. And yeah, he's pretty much the only guy in this show, the only character who has a real arc, in my opinion, who starts at a completely different point than where he ends up when the show wraps up. And that's why he's one of the most engaging characters, which, like I said, you wouldn't expect when you see him the first time he appears. And yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I wish there would have been more characters in this show like that got some real development. But yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay with the rest just being this great, amazing, this ridiculous nonsense, over the top bullshit, and then, have at least one character in there that has a great arc. So yeah, it's cool stuff. And if you take into consideration that this is an older series and all the source material, I think you can be fine with that and deal with that. And yeah, pretty much the only complaint or thing I wished for at the end of the series when it wrapped up after that eclectic final battle was that I would have liked to seen some of the later arcs, because after the first two arcs where it's only the national tournaments, Tsubasa and the rest of the main characters actually go on to play internationally, and some move to clubs in other countries. I think Kojiro goes to Italy, Tsubasa goes to Brazil naturally, Wakabayashi, the goalkeeper, goes to Germany. I think one of the other guys is in France. Yeah, Taro Mizaki is in France. And then they all meet again and play in the World Cup. I think it's the World Cup at some point. And that was really great. And I like that. I think that has an even more epic feel to it in the original series. And I would have liked to see that again. But sadly, this series ends after the second arc. And I have a feeling we won't get to see any more from this. I think new adaptations of Captain Tsubasa only come around when there's like a World Cup tournament in real life, like this cross-promotion thing. So it's like, soccer is on people's minds again. Let's push out another soccer series. let's do Captain Tsubasa again. And since they didn't keep like the series running now and just kept it going, and it says the end in the final screen and not the end question mark or to be continued or whatever, I doubt we'll see more adapted in this way, or with this team, with this cast, with this crew, which is a fucking shame, because aside from this nitpick and from the few little things here and there, this is the perfect, this is the best adaptation of the source material I've seen. This is better than the old show, this is better than 2001 show. Just from the standpoint of the presentation alone, this is a fantastic, fantastic show. Super enjoyable, and the best Captain Tsubasa version I've seen so far. And I would have loved to see the entire manga being adapted with this kind of production crew and with this kind of creative vision. And yeah, I'm really sad that we're probably not gonna get this, which is a real shame. It leaves me a bit sad at the end of the series, but not because of the series itself, just because it's so fucking good, and I would like to see more of this. But yeah, I guess there are worse things than that. Like, if a series is so good that you're just sad, the only thing you're really sad about is that you probably won't get more. I think that's a pretty nice thing to have, I guess, or a nice thing to say about a show.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I love this show. I love this version of Captain Tsubasa. If you want to check it out, I'm sad to say I don't know. At least I think in Germany over here, I think it's airing on Anime On Demand, which is a streaming service for in our country. But I don't think it's streamed somewhere in the US. I'm not sure. I didn't look it up. But, since soccer is not that big in the US, I mean, it's getting bigger, but not that big. I think it's not streamed there. I think it's streamed in Brazil, maybe, Mexico. I'm not sure. But I don't think in the US. So you would have to resort to fan subs. They are out there. So you can definitely check out the whole show that way. But not legally. Your decision. I think it's worth it to check it out, especially if you like sports anime. But in general, this is a very fun, enjoyable show. And if you never checked out a sports anime and you are in the mood for some ridiculous bullshit that is just over the top fun, pretty much all the way through. Very simple, very enjoyable show. I'd say give it a chance. Give it a go. In terms of non-realistic sports anime, or quote-unquote realistic, Haikyuu is not that super realistic, but more realistic than Captain Tsubasa. But yeah, in terms of those ridiculous shows, this is definitely one of my favorites now of all time. Like, up there with Kuroko's Basketball and Yowamushi Pedal. Either one of those could be number one, and Haikyuu is in the more realistic camp. But yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite shows from the previous seasons, because it was running a while, and I can wholeheartedly recommend it. If you want to give it a chance, do it. I think you won't regret it. And that is a wrap on the 73rd episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jack Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
So long, everybody.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
It's time to bust open the delusion of religious zealots once again.
And sometimes you gotta run before you can walk.